multiplying integers, okay? I want to make sure that we are understanding exactly what we need to do. Okay, so for example, let's look at the very first part. It says you can use a number line to see what happens when you multiply a positive number by a negative number. Now, example, reminder, this is page 147. So in case you are looking for this page in your textbook or notebook, it is there. Now, let's look at this. It says Henry made 3 withdrawals of $2 from his savings account. What was the change in his balance? So the first thing I want to do is I want to start exploring and looking for any keywords or things that I might notice. So for example, I noticed that there are 3 withdrawals. When I withdraw money, well, let's break this down. Sorry. There's 3 withdrawals, so I know that there's 3 occasions that happened. And then a withdrawal of $2. So that means we lose or we take out $2. So withdrawal of $2 means -2. Now, there's a lot of different ways we can show multiplication, right? So to mean multiplying, right, there's 3 ways we normally show it. So for example, I can use a multiplication symbol. I can say 3 times -2. I can say 3, and sometimes some people put a little dot, -2. That also means to multiply. Or I can put the numbers right next to each other with the parentheses in between. So 3 parentheses -2. All of these mean to multiply. Okay. So again, if you don't have your notes or you don't have your textbook, that is okay. You can write down those notes for multiplying. You can write keywords, withdraw $2, 3 occasions, right? You can highlight and underline it like that. That's why I mentioned it yesterday in class, and I also sent out that message. So you want to make sure you stay on top of that, okay? So we have to multiply. So when we multiply for this, now we're going to start looking at how to solve it. So it says to graph -2, we start at 0 and we move 2 units to the left. Now that's just going back to some of our old math properties, right? Start at 0 and then we move 1, 2 spaces to the left. That represents -2. So 3 times -2, well, that just means to do -2 plus -2 plus -2 over and over. It's like repeated addition.
What page is that?
147. 147. So we do that repeated repeated addition, right? We're adding -2 over and over again. So I add it 1 time here, a 2nd time here, and a 3rd time here. So I move 2 units to the left, and I do this a total of 3 times. So I move -2, -2, -2. So if I move it to the left 2 spaces and I move it 3 times, what number do I end up on after moving it 3 times over to the other part? Let me hear from, again, changing it up a little bit so I can hear from multiple people. Let me hear from Carter. Carter, go ahead and tell us, what number do we end up on after moving -2 spaces over 3 separate times? What number do we end up on?
-6.
Perfect. And that's going to be the result when I move -2 spaces to the left 3 times. So when they asked the question, what was the change in Henry's balance? The change was -$6, dollars, because it changed $6. It decreased by that amount. Piper's page 147. 147. And make sure y'all are writing with me. Okay, I should see y'all writing in your textbook or writing in your notebook. Right, because the first thing we're going to really go over, when even if you transition to coming to face-to-face at school, if you're staying online, you're going to have to know how to do all these things. Right? So if you don't know how to do all these things, then you want to make sure you're able to do it. So again, keep track of it, do everything you need to. Okay, so let's keep moving forward. So let's do another example. It says Lisa plays a video game in which she loses points. She loses 3 points 2 different times. What is her score? So it says that she loses 3 points. So that's like a -3. I lose 3 points. And this happens on 2 separate occasions. So that's just a +2. So -3 is the amount of points that she's losing, because losing 3 points is negative, and it happens 2 separate times. So we're going to go ahead and model this on our number line so we can see exactly this amount of movement. So find 2 times -3, because it's 2 groups of -3. All that means is I'm going to be adding -3 over and over. I'm actually going to do that 2 times. So that means I start here as 0. And we're going to move 3 spaces to the left, and we're going to do that 2 times. So I'm going to move 1, 2, 3 to the left. That's 1 time. 1, 2, 3 to the left. That's the 2nd time. All right. Giovanni, you riding with me, team? Yes, no, maybe? Okay, make sure you're riding. Okay, I might ask for it. Okay, so what number do we end up on after moving to the left that many spaces that many times, right? What number do I end up on? Let me hear from Janine. Janine, what number do I end up on after moving 3 spaces to the left 2 separate times?
-6.
Perfect. I get, again, kind of like the same answer, right? -6. Ooh. Okay, -6. So let's think about it. Okay, we just did 2 situations. We did 3 times -2, and we did 2 times -3. In the first case, I got -6, and in the second case, I got -6. So let's think about it. What do you notice about the product of 2 integers with different signs? Okay, raise your hand if you think you might notice a pattern. What happens when I multiply 2 numbers with different signs? It's something about my solution, whether it's a positive or a negative solution. Okay, what do y'all think? What is something that we might notice happens when I multiply 2 numbers with different signs? Brittany, what do you think?
Oh, so if you multiply, even if they're different, they're still the same numbers, just in a different place. You're still doing it like the same way, but instead of doing 2 3 times, you're doing 3 2 times.
Okay, so it's kind of
So
like we're
you're
still
basically just switching the way like you're doing.
okay, right, and that's something we do notice, right? We're still kind of doing like the same thing, right? We're doing the same process, and we get the same answer. Now, Brittany, let me ask you. I'm using 2 different sign numbers. I'm using a positive and a negative number. So when I used a positive and negative number, Brittany, what was my answer? Was it always positive or was it always negative?
It's always negative.
Always negative. So anytime we multiply 2 numbers with different signs, my product was negative. And so people without a textbook, you can write down multiplying 2 numbers with different signs. 2 numbers with different signs means your answer is going to be negative. Okay? Questions? Any questions? Use the raise your hand feature if you got a question. Any questions? Okay. Let me know. Like I said, let me know if you have a question. You can raise your hand. You can share, let me know. I have no problem. I love answering questions. Okay. All right, no questions are good alive. Pretty straightforward, right? It's not too bad, actually. Let's go to the next page. Next page is going to be page 148. Okay, so this is 148 in your textbook. All right. Now on page 148, we're going to talk about modeling integer multiplication. Now we're going to use counters, okay? So with counters, we're going to get a little bit more explanation on how this makes sense. So it says counters can represent positive and negative numbers, and it can help you understand how to find the product of two integers. So before we start talking about that, I also want to talk about what a negative number really means, okay? So for example, I want you to think of the number negative 10. So I'm going to write negative 10 right here. I want you to think about the number negative 10. Now, negative 10 just means, hey, I want the opposite of 10. This negative symbol represents the word opposite. So I'm looking for the opposite of 10. Okay, so if I asked you what is the opposite of 10, Alyssa, you can go ahead and unmute your mic. Alyssa, what's the opposite of negative? What is the opposite of positive 10?
Negative 10.
Negative 10, right? It's just like that. So I can think about the negative symbol as meaning to do the opposite. Now I'm going to use that idea when I do multiplication. So for example, they're asking me for the first one to do the product of negative 3 and negative 4. So it's multiplication. So that's negative 3 times negative 4. Now again, I want you to kind of put your mind in a world where that negative symbol means opposite. So for example, they're asking for the opposite of 3 groups of negative 4. So they're asking the opposite of, and y'all should be writing this in your textbook as well, okay? So if you're writing with me in your textbook, the opposite of 3 groups of negative 4. Gilberto, do you have a question? I saw your hand go up. Do you have a question?
No, sir.
Okay. All right, so they want the opposite of 3 groups of negative 4. So let's look at the model that they give us, okay? So over here, they have 3 groups, 1, 2, 3, and each of them have negative 4 in them. Negative 4, negative 4, negative 4. Now they asked me to do the opposite of 3 groups of negative 4. So the opposite of 3 groups of negative 4 is 3 groups of positive 4. So we did the opposite. That's exactly what it says. The opposite of 3 groups of negative 4. Okay. Noah, you're going to help me out, buddy. Noah, when I do 3 groups of positive 4, that's like 3 times 4, right? What would 3 times 4 get me?
12?
12, right? And so because this is asking me to do the opposite of 3 groups of negative 4, that's actually 3 groups of 4. So when I multiply negative 3 times negative 4, this gets me the answer of 12. So negative 3 times negative 4 will get me 12. Okay? So again, the reason that works is because, again, we're thinking about the negative symbol as representing the opposite. So what is the opposite of 3 groups of 4? What is the opposite of that? Well, the opposite of 3 groups of -4 is 3 groups of +4. So that's how I'm getting 12 as my answer. Okay. So let's think about it. What happened to the sign of my answer when I had 2 negative integers? So over here we had 2 negative numbers, right? So they're wondering what happened to my answer. Let me hear from Brooklyn. Brooklyn, you can go ahead and unmute your mic. Brooklyn, what happened when I multiplied, a negative times a negative? What happened to my answer? Was it what positive? Was it negative? What was it?
It was a positive.
Positive, right? My product was positive. And you can go ahead and mute your mic. Was positive. Again, some of y'all want to turn off your camera. That's fine. You're going to be marked absent for the whole class period, because I don't know why some of y'all have it completely turned off in between. Y'all think I don't check in between. Keep it on. Keep it on. Okay. Okay, keep it on so I can always see. I have my window with everyone's face in there. Okay. So when I do a negative times a negative, I get a positive answer, right? So let's think about that. I know when we do a negative times a negative, yeah, let's go to, actually no, let's skip this one, sorry. We're gonna skip this bottom one, sorry. We'll talk about it in just, actually no, let's go ahead and do this one, never mind, we're not gonna skip it. Let's do this one. So when I look at it, when I multiply a negative times another negative number, we got a positive answer. So that's why I'm circling it and putting the plus sign. If you want to write down the word positive, you can write down the word positive, but that's why I'm keeping it on there, right? Negative times the negative got me a positive, just like over here, right? This is the best example of why or how that works, right? Because the negative times the negative got me a positive number. In the other situation where I did like 3 times -2, I got -6, or I did -3, it's ugly 3. Or if I did 2 times -3, I still got -6. So I'm noticing when I'm multiplying different signs, if I'm multiplying 2 numbers with different signs, my answer would be negative. And this also works with positive numbers up here, right? Negative times a negative or positive times a positive. So when both signs are the same, another way to think about it, when both signs are the same, my answer is going to be positive. When both signs are different, that's when my sign is going to be negative. Okay, questions on multiplying? Any questions on multiplying before I move on? Anyone confused with my rules? Anyone not see a pattern or not see a rule? Okay, Piper, what's your question? You gotta be specific.
So it's 3. I don't understand. So
Okay, so what's your question? Be specific, remember? So it's okay if you don't understand, but you gotta tell me where you're not understanding. You can't just say like, oh, I don't get any of it, right? You gotta be a little bit more specific. So you can say,
I don't understand the different signs of the negative times negative equals.
Okay, so you remember over here when we did these two problems, right? Positive 3 times -2, -2 times positive, or positive 2 times -3. Remember these two problems we did?
Yeah.
Yeah. So notice when I did these two problems, we got negative answers. So even though we multiplied 2 different signs, like a negative and a positive, or a positive and a negative, both our answers came out to be negative. So that's why I know I'm noticing a rule. No matter what, if I multiply 2 numbers where one sign's positive or one sign's negative, or that they're different signs, my answer is going to be negative. So that's why over here, all we did was write down that thought. If they're different signs, your answer is negative, right? And it's a negative answer. Okay? Are you okay with that?
I guess.
Okay. And we're going to keep practicing it today and tomorrow. Okay. So over here, same thing with negatives, right? With the negatives, I had two negative numbers. Now, when I multiplied two negative numbers, remember, we want to think about it as the opposite of that. So the opposite groups of kind of thing. So in this situation, we always end up with a positive answer. And this works even with positive numbers. I did like positive 2 times positive 10. That's positive 20. So anytime I multiply two numbers the same sign, my answer is positive. With different signs, my answer is negative. Okay, and we'll keep practicing with that Piper. Okay, so if you have a question on that, we can kind of look over it again too, because we look at it with division O, so it's very similar. Okay, Brooklyn, question, what's up?
I'm confused so if you did -3 times -4, when you get -12?
Because look, -3 times -4, because it's the opposite of 3 groups of -4. So the opposite of 3 groups of -4 is 3 groups of positive 4. So that's why it becomes a positive 12. Because when we think about it, it's doing the opposite number of groups.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and we'll practice with it a little bit more. Sometimes just doing the rules a little bit easier, and that's what we'll do on Friday. But it's something to start thinking about how we get those rules. Okay, awesome. Let's do the next page. Now the next page is going to be all the way to skip a few pages. We're going to go to page 153. So go all the way to page 153. 153. Page 153.
Mr. Daniel,
Yes.
how are you drawing on a computer that well?
Oh, I have a little tablet. I don't know if y'all can see it. I probably can't see it. So I just write on here, and it just works so great. I used to use it when I did use it in the classroom, and I used it during summer school this summer, but
I hate drawing on the computer. It's so hard.
I know. This is from the school, so that's the only reason why I have it, but it's always fun. Oh, but see, sometimes it doesn't work out. See how it drew a really huge line through my screen? Not okay. All right, page 153. Okay, so let's look at dividing integers. Dividing integers is going to be a lot similar to multiplying integers, okay? So let's look at this question. It says the diver needs to descend to a depth of 100 feet. She wants to do it in 5 equal descents. How far does she travel in each descent? So again, reminder, this is page 153. Okay, some of us are taking a little bit more time. Now, when I look over here, a diver descended to a depth of 100 feet. If it's underneath the water, he's descending, right? Tell me, descent means to go down, like if a plane is landing and it's going down, it's descending. If the plane is going up or a person is going up, it's ascending.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Let me hear from Serena. Serena, if I'm going to a depth of 100 feet, so going down, would that be a positive or negative 100?
-100.
Negative 100. So I want to go from 0 all the way to negative 100. So we're going to use this number line at the right to find how far the diver should travel in each of the 5 descents. So I'm going to get my different color pen, and we're going to go in 5 separate steps. So somebody raise their hand and tell me how much would be in each descent if I wanted to do 5 even descents to get to 100. How many spaces would I have to go down every single time? Okay, you can use the raise your hand feature. How many spaces would I have to go down every single time to do 5 even descents? To go down 5 even descents very evenly. Okay, let me hear from Alyssa. Alyssa, go ahead and share.
I'm pretty sure you'd have to do 2 to get from like if you do 5 descents each, then you have to do 5 descents twice to get to 100.
Perfect. Okay. So you could do when I want to do 5 descents, right? I'm going to do 5 descents, but they're going to be 2 spaces each, right? And so Serena on here, Alyssa on here, when I go from 0 2 spaces, what number do I end on?
20.
20, right? So every time I go down every time I go down 20 spaces, I'm doing that so that way I can end up on 100 at the very end. So I have my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different ways.
I have a question.
Yes.
What if it was like 0 and then 90? You can't do 20 spots. You can't do 20.
Right. If it was 0, 90, I would give you maybe a different number, like if I did 10 descents, but I would make sure it works out pretty decent. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So when they ask us how far does the diver have to travel in each of the 5 descents, the diver needs to travel down 20 feet. And when we travel down 20 feet, all that means is negative 20 feet. Okay. Now, when we talk about division, we can write division in a bunch of different ways. So we don't have to write it just in 1 or 2 or 3 different ways. We can write it in multiple different ways. So other ways you can write division, right? There's a couple different signs for that before we move on. We have a regular division symbol, like the line with the 2 dots on the top and bottom. So I can say, for example, 10 divided by 2. I can use a /, so 10/2. Or I could even say it as a fraction, like 10/2. All of those mean division, right? So I can write it any one of those so you can kind of see it in those different ways. All right. Question. I got a question. Alyssa, you got a question, or is your hand is up from earlier?
No, I just had it up.
Okay, no worries. Okay, Brooklyn, you got a question? What's up?
Yeah, the slash, the second one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Why is it that way?
It's just another symbol, right? Some people connect, this and the fraction one together. But for example, back when, we couldn't use a division symbol, like when typing and stuff, some people just use that slash just to represent division. It's just another symbol to know. You'll usually see the first one or the last one from me.
And also, how do you do the third one on the computer? Like, how do you make a slash underneath the 10?
Okay, I'll show you. I'll show you how you can do it a little bit later after class, okay? But there is a way. So what we did to solve this problem is we took negative 100, okay, and to make sure you mute your microphone. So we take negative 100 and we divided it into 5 even sections. Because we split it into 5 because we want to know how many dives are out of 5 dives, how much do we have to do every single time. So now this letter C, letter D, and letter E kind of talks about a way that we can think about it. So if you're having a hard time, you're like, man, how did Mr. Daniel get negative 100 divided by 5 to be the answer of negative 20, right? So the way that we get negative 20 is we think about it as a multiplication problem. So when we think about it as a multiplication problem, we think something times 5 equals negative 100. So if I go back to my rules, if I did anything times, or if I did 2 numbers multiplied to get a negative answer, they had to be different signs, right? So my first number is 5, and since 5 is positive, and I need them to be different signs, right? So if I multiply a negative times a positive or a positive times a negative, that's how I'm getting a negative answer. So when I multiply two different signs, I want it to be negative answer. So if the first one is positive, my second number has to be negative. So that's how I know 20 is going to be negative in my answer, right? Because 20 has to be negative, because if 5 is positive, 20 has to be negative.
So since our answer is
Negative.
negative, then it would have to be negative because we already have a positive number.
Right, because remember, if I do different signs, if I multiply or divide by, well, I know if I multiply by different signs, my answer is negative. And since this answer is negative, I want to get to a negative answer. So I got to make sure my next number is different. So instead of positive, it needs to be negative.
Okay.
Yep. And since we know that 5 times 20 gets me 100, I could say that 5 times negative 20 would get me negative 100. And so that's how we get our final answer, that she descends 20 feet. Now remember, descending 20 feet just means negative 20 feet. Because we're talking about how much change she has to do in order to get to that number, that negative 100 depth. Okay? Questions? Any questions, confusions, or doubts? Questions? Again, ask away, let me know, right? Don't wait until test next week to say, hey, I don't get it. No questions, good alive, breathing. Okay, all right, let's keep going. Using the process that we just learned, we're gonna find the quotients, or the answer to my division problems for all of these. So we kind of notice that same process, okay? So let's think about it. Over here, it's 14 divided by negative 7 equals what? So that means negative 7 times something equals 14. Now, going back to my rules, different signs get me a negative answer. Same signs get me a positive answer, okay? So let me hear from Nicole. Nicole, are you here today? Nicole, you can unmute and share. Okay. Nicole, what do you think? Am I going to have to, if I want to get a positive answer, do the signs have to be the same or different? What do you think? Nicole, are you there, man? Maybe she's not there. Different, okay? So you said different. So if I want them to be different, then that's gonna get me a negative answer. In this case, I want to get a positive answer. So instead of different signs, Nicole, I'm gonna go ahead and do the same sign because I want them to be positive in my answer. So Nicole, what could I multiply 7 by to get to 14? What do you think? What can I multiply 7 by to get to 14? And you can type it in the chat if you need to, Nicole, no problem. Two, right? So I can multiply 7 by 2, and since I want it to be positive, I'm going to do the same sign, okay? So if I want to do a positive 14, I'm going to multiply negative 7 by a negative 2. So 14 divided by negative 7 get me negative 2. Awesome. Let's do the same thing. Negative 36 divided by negative 9 equals something. So that means negative 9 times something gets me negative 36. Okay? So let's break that one down, guys. Let me hear from... Oh, gotta get rid of this one student's name. Let's go ahead and hear from Miss Lyric. Okay, Lyric, I see you in here, ma'am. Lyric, let's think about this. Remember, so I want to get a negative answer. Should I multiply different signs or by the same sign to get a negative answer? What do you think? Miss Lyric? see, because I think I got an email from them. Okay, let me spin again. Let me hear from Andrea. Andrea, go ahead and help us out, ma'am. If I divide, or I'm sorry, if I'm multiplying two numbers, I get a negative answer, right? Do I want two numbers with the same sign or two numbers with the different sign? What do you think, Andrea? You can unmute and then share.
Can you repeat the question?
Okay, so when I look at this, right, remember when I want to get a negative answer, right? So should I multiply? So I'm trying to think, do I need different signs or same signs to get a negative answer? So what do I need? Do I need different signs or same signs to get a negative answer?
Same.
Okay, so look, when I do same, that goes back to what we did on this first example, when I did multiplication. When I multiplied same signs, I got a positive answer over here, right? So I don't want the same signs. What do I want instead, Andrea?
Different.
Different, okay? So in this case, I'm going to do -9, and I'm going to multiply it by +4. -9 times +4 will get me -36, so that's my answer. Now, notice a pattern, guys. When I divide two numbers with the different signs, my answer is negative. When I divide two numbers with the same sign, my answer is positive. So let's see how this works. Let's do -55 divided by 11. Well, the different signs, right? So I'm noticing the pattern, different signs, so my answer should be negative. So if I do 55 divided by 11, what would be my answer? Okay, you can raise your hand if you think you might know. If I did 55 divided by 11, what would that get me? Okay, Carter, what do you think?
5.
5. And since I have different signs, my answer is -5. All right, Carter, help me out with the last one too. We have same signs, 45 divided by -5. Well, if I have the same sign, I know my answer is positive. So Carter, what's 45 divided by 5?
9.
9. And that's it. So if I look at this, it's the same thing that's going on with multiplication. When I divide two numbers with different signs, my answer is negative. So when I divide two numbers with different signs, it equals a negative answer. And when I divide two numbers with the same sign, when I divide them with the same sign, we notice my answers were all positive. Okay, and that's one of the most important things that we notice. We notice it's the exact same rule from multiplying integers, and that's something that we're going to really